The movie starts with a police officer chasing a dangerous criminal. After a long pursuit, he manages to catch him, but the criminal is up on a water pipe and tries to resist to escape. At that moment, another officer arrives and stands below, constantly throwing stones at the criminal. He aims so well that all the stones hit the criminal's head. Fearing for his life, the criminal begs the officer not to throw again, promising to come down. The criminal descends, and the officer begins to interrogate him to find out what he was smuggling. It's clear the officer is skilled, as he gets the criminal to confess he was smuggling drugs. The officer follows the case until he's certain the criminal has been tried and served his sentence. Afterward, the officer, named Choi, is summoned to the office of the head of the Internal Affairs Division. Choi is surprised when the chief tells him he wants him for a secret mission to monitor another officer named Kong. Choi feels the mission is strange and inappropriate for him to monitor a fellow officer, so he declines. Before Choi leaves, the chief stops him, saying the mission will change his life. He explains that Kong is no ordinary officer. He is professional and has arrested many criminals, but there are many suspicions surrounding him. The chief suggests Kong is likely supported by a secret organization, receiving large sums of money from an unknown source. Your mission, champion, is to uncover Kang's secret and find the source of this money, the chief states. Remember, the honor of the police force is at risk, and you'll save it by cleaning up Kang's mess before it reaches the press. Choi is puzzled as to why he, specifically, was chosen for this mission. The chief explains simply, "Your grandfather and father were officers. Police blood runs in your veins. As I said, you are a son of the force." He continues, expressing confidence that Choi is a distinguished officer who will uncover the secret behind Kong, which is why he chose him. The chief's words excite Choi, and he decides to accept the mission. However, he becomes worried when he learns that a previous officer who took on the same mission was murdered, likely by Kang's supporters to keep their secret. Choi hides his anxiety from the chief so as not to be seen as a coward. He says goodbye and leaves, but the matter constantly weighs on his mind, and he fears this might be the last case of his life. After a long contemplation, he tells himself, it's all or nothing, and decides to steel his heart and take on the mission. The next day, he meets the chief for more information on Kong. The chief provides details about Kong and also about everyone around him, even the criminals Kong arrested one by one. The amount of information is overwhelming, making Choi feel his head will melt. Still, he tries to focus so he can approach the mission fully informed. What catches his attention are two criminals, one named Cha and the other Nam. The strange thing is that Kong arrested them multiple times, yet they were released from prison each time, even though everyone knows they are involved in illegal drug activity. After understanding everything, Choi says farewell to the chief and goes to his new office. We learn the chief transferred him there specifically to work with Kong and be close to him. As soon as Kong learns of Choi's transfer, he takes him along on a mission. Choi goes, thinking, why are things moving so fast? He decides to impress Kong and show him he's an exceptionally skilled officer, hoping Kong will take him into his confidence. Kong is his new superior, so he treats Choi with arrogance and doesn't pay him much attention. Despite this, Choi focuses on his goal, getting closer to him to expose all his transgressions. From the first mission, he realizes Kong is targeting Nam. He is very surprised that Kong is determined to jail Nam, even though Nam always gets out. He starts to suspect something is wrong and feels lost, unable to understand Kang's thinking, especially since Kong uses an addict as an informant to relay news about Nam. That evening, Choi celebrates his joining the new team. He doesn't like them at all as their jokes are crude, but he tries to blend in. The next day, Choi goes on a second mission with Kong. Monitoring Kong, he notices that he is also looking for Cha and is determined to find him. Choi decides to film Kong all the time, thinking he might use the footage as evidence against him when he exposes the truth. Of course, he films him secretly without Kong noticing. Afterward, he follows Kong everywhere. Even when Kong goes to a restaurant to meet an unknown person, Choi follows, hiding so Kong won't see him. He has the waiter place a voice recorder under the napkin on Kang's table. He listens to the entire conversation between Kong and the person he is with. The conversation is all about Nam and how he must be jailed. Choi senses that Nam was once on Kang's side and the people behind him, but they had a falling out, and now they want to get rid of him. Choi is intensely focused on the conversation, but suddenly, the waiter gets nervous, for an unknown reason, and spills water on the recording device, causing it to malfunction. Clumsily, as the waiter pulls the napkin from under the device, he looks in Choi's direction. Kong notices the waiter's nervousness and looks towards Choi, but Choi leaves at the last moment before Kong sees him. The following day, Choi goes with Kong to a boat race. Choi is very calm, while Kong is extraordinarily excited about the race. Choi is confused by Kang's excessive enthusiasm, but he understands the reason when he learns Kong has placed a bet on the race. Suddenly, Kong jumps for joy and tells Choi he won. Choi pretends to be happy for him, but he doesn't really care. Choi remains constantly by his side like a shadow. He is furious that he has been with Kong for a while, with his eyes on him all the time, yet hasn't noticed anything strange or seen him contact Nam or Cha. Later, Choi goes out with Kong in a friendly way, like friends. He is surprised when Kong tells him he knew his father. We discover that Choi's father was murdered, and Kong was the officer in charge of the investigation. Kong continues, telling Choi, "You were a little kid back then, and honestly, I never imagined I'd see you as an officer one day." Choi replies that he loved his father and was proud of him, which is why he decided to become an officer like him. Kong pauses, then speaks sadly, "You're lucky you were proud of your father, but I was afraid for anyone to know mine." He reveals his father was a con artist and a drug addict, and he lived ashamed of him. He was even too ashamed to tell anyone about his father's death, attending the funeral alone and not informing any of his friends. He adds, "Your father was also a friend of mine, and he was the only one who knew about the funeral. He came and stood by me." Choi is happy to learn that Kong was his father's friend and asks him to tell him more about his father. Kong refuses, saying, "Don't rush. You'll know everything, but in time," and ends the conversation. Afterward, Choi prepares a final report on Kong. He writes in the report that there is no evidence proving Kong is involved in bribery or embezzlement, and no information suggests anyone is behind him. Everything confirms he is a normal officer working legally. He sends the report to the chief, but the chief is not convinced and decides to check for himself. The next day, Choi is with Kong, and they are on their way to look for Nam. Suddenly, the chief and a large number of police officers surround Kang's car. The chief addresses Kong, accusing him of taking a bribe and requesting to search his house. Kong seems nervous but agrees to the search. The chief acts as if he doesn't know Choi, so Kong doesn't realize Choi is with internal affairs. Choi waits until Kong leaves with the police officers, then approaches the chief and whispers, "Why did you do that? Didn't I send you a final report stating Kong is innocent?" The chief replies, "You did your job. Now it's time for me to do mine and be sure myself." He reassures him, "Don't worry, I won't reveal your secret," and leaves him. The chief then goes to Kang's house and searches it thoroughly, even breaking into his safe, but he finds no money. All he finds are some contracts for buying and selling. Despite this not being proof of Kong taking bribes, the chief arrests him anyway. He then interrogates him, telling him he is a disgrace to the police force because he accepted a bribe and sacrificed his credibility for money. He vows to arrest everyone behind him and those who secretly support him. Kong retorts, "If you think I'm a disgrace to the police, then you are too, because you let your son's killer escape unpunished." As soon as Kong mentions this, the chief loses his temper, grabs him angrily, and nearly strangles him. He tells Kong he is like a malignant tumor that must be eliminated. It is clear there is a personal feud between them. Afterward, the other officers all turn on Choi, suspecting he betrayed Kong to the chief. Since he is the newest member, he is their first suspect. To confirm their suspicions, they tie him up and take his phone to search it. Choi pushes them away and takes his phone back. At that moment, one officer grabs Choi, and another steps on his hand to force him to drop the phone. Despite the pain, Choi holds onto the phone, but he cannot endure it for long and is forced to let go. The officer takes the phone and is about to search it, but Kong arrives at the last minute. The officer hands Kong the phone and tells him, "Take it and search it yourself. This guy is a spy planted by internal affairs among us." Kong is shocked by what he learns, as he had trusted Choi and gotten close to him recently, even sharing details about his father that no one else knew. Kong makes everyone leave and sits down with Choi alone. Choi tells him, "I didn't sell you out. I wrote in the report that you were innocent, which is what I truly saw from you." Kong responds, "I'll forgive you for spying on me, and I'll continue to treat you as one of my team, but on one condition. You follow my orders, not internal affairs." He then leaves. Later, the chief meets Choi and accuses him of covering up for Kong. He says, "I want to share a surprise you didn't know. Your father jailed Kang's father for drug abuse. At that time, Kang's mother couldn't handle the shock and ended her life. Since then, Choi's father felt guilty towards Kong and was always by his side." The chief gives him a file containing all the information about his father to confirm his words. Choi is stunned when he discovers from the file the chief gave him that his father was involved in bribery. The corruption Kong is currently involved in was actually learned from Choi's father. The real shock for Choi comes when the chief tells him that in his final days, his father became an addict. At that moment, Choi remembers when his father died. The police examined his body and reported that it was full of needle marks. Because of what he remembers, he is certain the chief is not deceiving him. The chief continues, saying that there was an organization behind his father that was paying him bribes. This same organization is now paying Kong. Choi then understands why the chief chose him specifically for the mission. The chief believed Kong would recruit Choi into the organization supporting him, as Choi's father was once a part of them, and Choi was meant to take his place. Choi decides to withdraw from the mission. The chief then tells him that this organization is responsible for his father's death. If he wants to avenge his father, he must continue the mission. Choi is very conflicted and can't make a decision. He leaves the chief. Afterward, he drinks forbidden substances, unable to comprehend the amount of ugly information he learned about his father. He drinks heavily to forget that his father, whom he considered his idol, turned out to be an addict and a bribe taker. He stays like this until he falls asleep from exhaustion. The next day, Kong reaches Cha. He tries to extract information from him by threatening to gouge out his eye. He turns on a machine, similar to a saw, and brings it very close to Cha's eye, almost tearing it out. Despite this, Cha refuses to speak. Choi enters and asks Kong to stop immediately, saying it's not the right way to interrogate. Kong gets annoyed because he doesn't like anyone interfering with his methods. He injures Choi with the tool he has and throws him to the ground without caring about his wound. He continues interrogating Cha until he gets the information he wants. Choi is very upset by this incident and begins to believe that Kong is indeed a dangerous person. Afterward, he goes to talk to him, telling him his methods are wrong and that what he's doing is no different from the criminals he is chasing. Kong, of course, ignores him. He believes his method is right, and the most important thing is to get the information from the criminal, no matter the means used. He tells Choi, "If you can't be like me and get information from criminals, it's better you resign." Choi responds that he now understands why his father didn't want him to become a police officer. Kong says, "Your father was right. He thought you were a failure and weak, but I'll make you tough." He then takes him along and has him wait in the car while he goes down to collect money from an unknown person. Choi realizes this person is from the organization. He photographs Kong taking the money. He is surprised that Kong took him along even though he could report him. Although Choi knows Kong is corrupt, he pretends to be oblivious and acts normally with him. The next day, Nam is seen at his secret factory, manufacturing an illegal narcotic substance. He is planning the large amount of money he will get from the substance. Suddenly, Kong breaks into Nam's secret factory and tells him he's under arrest for manufacturing narcotic substances. Nam pretends to be naive, saying, "Me manufacturing a narcotic? Show me where this substance is then." At that moment, Kong orders his assistant to turn on the machine that produces the narcotic substance. But the machine doesn't work or release anything because it needs the key to operate. Nam tells him, "See, you're an overbearing officer and you're wronging me." Suddenly, Nam swallows the key before Kong can take it. However, Kong is determined not to let him go until he proves his crime and arrests him. He forcefully puts his hand in Nam's mouth and makes him vomit the key. After getting it back, he turns on the machine, confirms that Nam is indeed manufacturing a narcotic substance, and arrests him. At the same time, Choi is in the factory, looking for the rest of Nam's associates. He manages to catch 2 of them, but one of them tries to stab him. Choi grabs him, hits him, and manages to push him away. He grabs his phone and calls Kong to come to him. At that moment, the criminal takes advantage of Choi's distraction and stabs him. Choi falls to the ground, screaming from the intense pain. Despite his pain, he slams the criminal who stabbed him onto the floor, making him lose consciousness. He takes out a whistle he has and blows it to let Kong know his location. This was their agreement. Anyone in trouble blows the whistle. As soon as Kong hears the whistle sound, he runs as fast as he can towards the sound. Meanwhile, the criminal who stabbed Choi regains consciousness and tries to stab him again. But Kong arrives at the last moment and shoots the criminal right in the head. He immediately rushes Choi to the hospital. After Kong takes Choi to the hospital, he gets a call from a criminal who says, "I have an offer for you that will cover all your debts." We learn that Kong is heavily in debt because of his gambling. The offer is somewhat tempting for Kong. The next day, Choi wakes up. While he's in the hospital, his female colleague visits him and gives him a file he requested. The file is about the killer of the officer who was investigating Kong. Choi is surprised when he finds that the killer had a scar near his ear when he was arrested, but the scar was gone after he was jailed. He suddenly remembers the person who stabbed him also had a scar. He also remembers the chief saying that Kong arrested the killer. He feels something is wrong, and that the killer who went to prison was swapped with another person. The real killer is the one who stabbed Choi earlier. He decides to go see Kong, even though he is still unwell. When he arrives, he confronts him, saying, "The person who stabbed me had a scar, and the killer also had the same scar, but the person you arrested had no scar. When I investigated him, I learned he had late-stage cancer, and a large sum of money was deposited into his account after he was jailed." Kong gets nervous and asks, "What do you mean?" Choi says, "Simply put, you arrested an innocent person and you and the people behind you gave him money to confess to being the killer. Your goal was to protect the real killer. Based on my analysis, you were the one who had the killer murder the officer to get rid of him. And when you felt this killer might betray you and expose your secret, you killed him, claiming you were defending me. But in reality, you intended to kill him before he even stabbed me." Kong is very flustered and cannot reply. Choi is certain of his analysis because of Kang's confusion. He tells him that he discovered he was releasing Nam from prison on the orders of the people paying him, and also arresting him on their orders. Kong gets very fed up and says, I'm the villain in everyone's story. Are you happy now? Just mind your own business. And walks away. But suddenly, he returns, drags Choi out of the car, and starts beating him, saying, "Remember, you brought this on yourself." He keeps hitting him until he puts him in the trunk of the car and locks him in. Then he drives off, leaving Choi in the car. Kong goes to meet the people who pay him, and he receives money from them in exchange for the services he provides. He is undecided on how to handle Choi. Suddenly, he sees one of the men paying him pushing the car into the sea. The man had discovered Choi's presence inside. Kong tries to stop him, but the man doesn't listen and continues to push the car until it falls into the sea. Kong gets angry, pulls out his gun, and yells, "Are you crazy? The tide is low here. When the tide goes out, the car will be visible, and everyone will find a body inside. With the investigation, they'll know I was the one who hit Choi and forced him into the car. Then my reputation will be destroyed. I'll be fired, and I won't be able to help you anymore." He shouts, "Get him out quickly." The man is convinced by Kang's words. He presses the car's remote control and opens the trunk. Choi quickly crawls out before he suffocates. Unfortunately, Choi doesn't know how to swim, so Kong jumps in to rescue him with his boat. Afterward, Kong continues on his way and doesn't take him back to shore. He takes him to a giant ship and tells him, "Since you know everything, I want you to know that I also work in delivering narcotics. That's why the organization supports me and gives me money. Stay where you are until I deliver the goods I have. If you move and get killed, I'm not responsible." He gives him a gun to defend himself if anyone attacks him. Then, he leaves to deliver the goods. Despite the warning, Choi goes up to the ship. He uses the gun Kong gave him and attacks the gang members on the ship. The gang members start firing at him. During the exchange of fire, Kong is shot. Choi is very alarmed and keeps calling out to him. At this moment, the police arrive and surround the ship. The gang members are finally arrested. Choi helps move Kong to the ambulance. Of course, Kong is not arrested because the police believe he came to arrest the gang and was injured during the clash with them. Later, Kong argues with Choi for going onto the ship despite his warning. While Kong is talking to Choi, the chief arrives. He tells Kong that he will arrest him for tampering with the officer's murder case, arresting an innocent person, and presenting him to justice as the killer. Choi is very upset. Although he knows Kong is guilty, he didn't want him to go to prison. Despite his sadness for Kong, he cannot stop the chief from arresting him. After a while, Kong is released from prison. He returns to work because there is no evidence of his crimes. Choi then goes to meet him. Kong is surprised when he learns that Choi has been promoted to deputy director. He is very happy for him. The two of them return to working together. We learn that Kong has officially decided to go straight and only arrest criminals. The movie ends here with Kong returning to the right path. The narrator reminds the viewer to like the video and subscribe to the channel.